Welcome to the LifePro podcast, where today I have the pleasure of having Andrea Lopez, who's a connection psychic development coach. And today's topic is suffering, which can mean a lot of different things. So I'm excited to delve deep into this. But before we get started, how are you doing today, Andrea?
Oh, I'm so excited. I'm so good and happy to be here.
Likewise. So before we get into suffering, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself, your journey in life?
Oh God. Well, I'm going to start where I am now. So, as you said, psychic development connection coach for people. I'm also a nurse. And it's been a very interesting road and where I've ended up, from being this very science geared person working in veterinary medicine, logic focused, to also working in this spiritual connection aspect. And the way I got there was not necessarily the way that I intended, but it was really everything that I could have hoped for in every way that it was difficult. Should I get into that or?
Please do.
Okay. So yeah, a little bit of my journey is I'm going to go a little bit into the psychic work first, is really unpacking and unlocking this aspect of myself that had a deep connection to really everything in life, past, present, future. But that only came when I finally made the choice that I wanted something different for myself. And I'm going backwards here. I grew up in a very difficult household, very traumatic, very there was a lot of violence, there was a lot of turbulence, there was a lot of difficulty, a lot of adversity that hadn't really been solved from the previous generations, right? It never came to a place of understanding. Mm-hmm. And there was just a point, I would say probably about 6 or so years ago, probably even before that, that I had made an exit plan, if you will, to leave all of that. And so I was distancing myself from my family and just kind of realized I wanted a totally different life. And then I found in that process somebody that I deeply fell in love with, but it was in that moment that all my traumas started to appear, everything. And so flashbacks, I was having just these somatic experiences where I would just freeze up in the middle of a conversation with this guy and just felt extremely vulnerable in everything that I was doing, in the way that I was thinking, in the way that I was making my decisions, in the way that I would just carry a conversation. It all just started becoming very difficult. Mm-hmm. And that was really hard for me to see because, I don't have these problems. And that wasn't something that I knew of myself, but I also never let anybody get close to me. And so it was in that time that I had already had this exit plan to leave Los Angeles, to totally transform my life and do something different, that I also had to say goodbye to him. And it was because I realized that I was very unstable. I was extremely unstable. I was diagnosed with CPTSD. He's actually the one that told me I had PTSD. He's heavily in the military, and they, for anybody who's listening who's in the military knows they have to go through a screening process every single time they deploy or come back. Because he had done that, he was able to identify those symptoms in me and told me I was classic, just classic in all the ways. And it was a godsend, because nobody could have ever gotten close enough to me to, one, see it. I was very good at hiding all my issues, which, is, I feel like we all have a bit of that. We're just always hiding our pain. And then nobody could get close enough to me for me to even love them. And so when someone did, I realized how hard intimacy was for me. Even the idea of it, we were in a long distance relationship, so we didn't see each other much, but just the idea, everything that was happening in my mind was enough to set me off.
Wow.
And so, yeah.
So how did you get, how did you get to the point where you had these psychic powers? How did that this beautiful thing come out of your suffering?
Okay, I love using this example because everyone watches TV at some point in their life. And it's one of my favorite analogies. Have you seen maybe like sci-fi shows or something that they talk about like supernatural experiences come from near-death experiences?
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So I will answer your question, but I kind of want to go on this little tangent first because I feel like it's so important.
Okay.
One thing I always tell my clients is, as far as these near-death experiences, we have all experienced little deaths or pretty significant deaths. Like when we're a toddler, we were either poor, we didn't have enough love, nurturing, like to a toddler or to somebody who's younger, like these are pretty significant deaths. As an adult, in hindsight, when you think about it, you're like, that's not that big of a deal. If you're not very well versed as far as human connection and things of the sort, it's like, oh, they were left alone for a little bit. That's okay. And maybe, for all I know, that's what's happening to some adults. But these are near-death experiences. To a toddler, connection is the epitome of life. I mean, for all of us, but especially then when you don't have anything else, you don't have assets, you don't have an awareness of a world outside of you and your caretaker. And so we've all had those. But my, if you will, unraveling and finally having the ability of awareness of those near-death experiences all my life happened 5 years ago, after this partner told me, you have PTSD, because I felt love. And so love came in, the pain came in, and I started having these flashbacks. Mm-hmm. So for people who are not aware, there's multiple kinds. There's like somatic, where you're kind of like feeling the pain in your body. Somebody says something and it just like hurts you in your stomach or your chest a different way. Or like if you've ever rolled an ankle and you see someone do it, it's like, oh, Jesus Christ, I felt that again.
You relive the pain over and over again.
Yes. And I was having those somatically, visually, and it was almost like I got transported or teleported through time. But what I realized was sometimes those visual flashbacks came true. And I had tidbits of that when I was in my late teens that I can recall. I was like, I don't know why I feel like this is going to happen. And, everyone like, oh, Andrea, that's your imagination, or, don't worry about it. But I'm like, no, like I know this time, like this is going to happen. And then it would. Mm-hmm. So during this time of flashbacks, when I had enough awareness and maturity behind me and, that science background, it's like, okay, first of all, we're not going to tell anybody this is a thing because either I'm going crazy or this is real and that's crazy. Or, step three is, step three, I skipped. Step two was to get really intimate with this part of myself, because there has to be something here, because it keeps happening. Yeah. And I can't tell the difference. And so it made my flashbacks worse. People who have been in these high stress places, who have to be hyper vigilant, hyper aware, acknowledging patterns, have a bit of foresight,
Yeah.
right? Street smarts. But they were so specific. So what I did is I kept a little journal with me, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna, with my pen, write down. I'm like, I think such and such is pregnant, right? I was working at a vet hospital at the time. Somebody walked in, I was like, why do I feel like she's pregnant? Comes a little later, and she was like, I have to tell you something. And I was like, what is it? She was like, well, I'll tell you later. And so I went up to her. I took a gamble because I was like only I know what's going on in my head. But I'm like, okay. I'm like, as a joke, like, the voices are talking. I'm like, you gotta say something. We gotta take the leap and figure out if this is real, because I can't keep going this way.
Yeah.
I can't keep living like this. And so I just went up to her. I was like, I know that thing you're gonna tell me later. I was like, are you pregnant by chance? And she was like, oh my God, took me aside, started like whispering. And I was like, yeah. I was like, yes, also congratulations. That's amazing. It was like, for the both of us, right? Me to me. I'm like, this is a win. And I started cultivating more experiences like this when I was speaking out.
Yeah.
To prove to myself that I wasn't crazy. Yeah, I had this dysregulation, but there was something. There was like something to it.
Right.
Yeah. So that's kind of where that started, where I really started to acknowledge this is a real thing. The more I started beta testing it and figuring out its behavioral characteristics, its textures, its characters. Which I could
Talk about.
continue going on that, unless you had another question about
Well,
it.
I mean, we talked a little bit about, we both, maybe a little bit different situation, but we've both lost our mothers. And you told me that it came to you 3 days before, right? You want to
Yeah.
you want to
Yeah.
talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So interesting. Well, one of the things that I realized as I started to develop this, not just understand that I had this ability, but develop it, a relationship with it. So my existence in this world could, one, be easier, two, make sense, and three, it's a part of myself, might as well make it fun.
Yeah.
And so I started doing readings for people. And I started realizing how spot on they are, the symbolism, what they meant, kind of deciphering it, right? That's like step 2 after just the characteristics and just acknowledgement is deciphering. And I had a rocky relationship with my mother. We're very different. And so I hadn't really spoken to her. I mean, when I went to Texas, I left everything. I didn't know anybody when I moved out there. And I started getting this just intuitive hit, like something's going to happen. Except when you build this ability, it starts having a little more nuance to it and a little more detail. And it was, well, I know something's going to happen with my mother and she's going to pass, and I'm feeling it. And so this is November and I'm feeling it. I'm like, I'm running out of time. I'm like, okay, I'm running out of time. Like, if I'm going to have my last conversation with her, it's going to be sooner versus later, because like, you're getting this one shot. You're lucky enough to have the opportunity. So I set up a session with my therapist. First of all, I was
Very
like,
important.
Yeah. I was like, we're doing the thing. Yeah. You gotta have your team with you. I was like, I'm going to talk to her. And so I did. And it was a beautiful relationship, or not relationship, beautiful conversation. We were able to relate in a very beautiful way.
Yeah.
And I think part of that was knowing she was going to die, right? Like when, you know, speaking of suffering, like when everything is laid on the line and you have nothing to lose, it's so incredible how in those moments you just lay your heart on the line. It's like, really, that's what it takes?
Yeah.
Nothing to lose. And after that conversation, I hung up with her. I just had this knowing. I was like, oh shoot, we all need to talk to her, all her daughters. But there's rules, a little bit past, what is it? Like a Back to the Future rule.
Yeah.
The future, or the present is the future's past. So I couldn't meddle. I was like,
Wow.
well,
Wow. Wow.
so I couldn't tell my sister. I couldn't tell her, you know, you have to go talk to mom. You have to, you know, there was kind of there's a respect for this type of work. I was like, okay, I'm like, we're just gonna let it go. We're just gonna let it go and see what happens. So that was November. December came around. And I had a very interesting experience that I could get into if you wanted, but it's pretty out there. I live my life very sober. Let me just like make that very clear. Psychedelics, those things it's not really my life. But just a pretty intense experience where I'm receiving all this information, and it's really as simple as like picturing someone you love near and dear, or remembering a very, very vivid memory. Like that's kind of how the visuals come through. Like they're very somatic. You can almost smell the flowers or daisies in that hike you had with your mother 5 years ago, or whatever the thing is. It's like that, but being able to translate it is the key part. And so I was having an experience of the sort, and you know, that's where I got the message from my mom in this visual psychic space, if you will, in my mind. She was going to pass in 3 days, and I need you to take care of Sophia, which was my younger sister who had yet to talk to her.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. So that's when I felt like I had the green light. And I called her and I said, look, this is what I got. I was like, she's going to die in 3 days. And I had a friend living with me at the time who didn't really believe in this stuff. And she was like, I don't know. She was like, that sounds like a dream. I was like, it's cool. I was like, that's fine. But the message is there. And so I told my sister, and she was like, okay, just very accepting. This is something that this is a trait. This ability is actually something that runs in my mother's side from Cuba, from the Caribbean. It's very, very much a part of our culture. I mean, there's some differences in the way people practice sometimes, but it's just something that's passed down. And yeah, so
so she believed you.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then so then my mother gave her a call. My mother's still alive. Gave her a call, and my sister picked up for the first time and met her with love. Hung up the phone, you know, had her conversation, spoke with me, and she was like, I talked to mom. She called me, you know, right after you told me that. And she had let go of her hate, her anger, just relinquished all of it, and met her with love. And she was like, well, if what you said is true, that's how I want to meet her. And my sister had gone to go meet some family members far away from her house. And it was interesting because when she got there, after she had the conversation with my mother here in the physical over the phone, she found out the people she was staying with had COVID. And she was like, shoot, if this is true, she was like, well, the COVID and all that did happen. She was like, well, I should probably go home. And if what you said is true, I don't really want to be making a 3-hour drive in that emotional condition.
Yeah.
I was out in Florida where it's raining all the time and it gets kind of mucky. So my sister drove home, and I'm pretty sure it was that night that she got there back to her house from that 3-hour drive. The next morning I got a call from my sister that my mom had passed.
Oh
But
man.
she passed in a house fire.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was only her room that caught on fire. It started in her room.
Wow.
And yeah.
That's remarkable. I mean, just to I don't even know how to digest that really. Like that's crazy. That's, for you to have to go through the suffering that you did as a child and have to kind of get this, it's hard for me to digest. But wow. So let's transition to our topic. Obviously you had a very difficult childhood.
Mm.
And you would say that you suffered as a child.
Yeah.
So how do you define suffering? Like, what does that mean to you?
Just a lot of pain.
Mm,
Pain. And it could be of multiple levels, right? There's physical pain, there's emotional pain, there's existential pain,
right.
just the difficulty of existing as a
Right.
human.
Yeah. And what really fascinates me about suffering is sometimes we are suffering and we're not conscious. We're not aware of it. Like
Mm.
it's maybe all that we know. Like, especially as a child, this is our world. Like, we don't know any better. We don't know how things can be better. I think that all of us, to some extent, have had some degree of suffering at some stage in our lives, whether it's early, later in life. Like, we've had to go through it. And I think sometimes we have trauma as a result of suffering, right? Like, so how would you differentiate trauma and suffering?
So I'll answer that in a minute. I really wanted to say something because you just like pulled in my heartstrings when you said something about like suffering and like not even knowing we're suffering. It really wasn't until probably a year or two ago that I realized that suffering is not normal. Like, it is not normal at all. As
Right.
far as the degree and the severity that I was experiencing it. And I had even created this relationship with my suffering, like, oh, it's necessary, a little bit of martyrdom, just to be able to cope with the fact that this is the way that I was existing. But the way that I would say suffering is different from trauma is, I feel like trauma tends to be a little more specific. In as far as like the category, sometimes it's acute. Sometimes like suffering is a result of trauma, and then sometimes suffering, if it is well mitigated and handled, does not become long-term complex trauma. So suffering is kind of that
Right.
emotional state of anguish,
Yeah.
where trauma is a little more pervasive. And yeah, that's kind of it. Just yeah, and there's different forms of trauma, but I would say mostly that like trauma has to have a little more specificity to it.
Yeah. And do a lot of times, I mean, is suffering hand in hand with basically having no power to come out of that state? Like, as a child, you know, we might be suffering for various reasons, whether it's most of the time it's because of parents, right? Because of what parents are, or the situation that we are with our parents. Um, and we don't have the power to leave that situation. But further in life, like, it could be a domestic situation later in life where we might have the power, yet people are still reluctant to make the changes required to come out of their situation. Like, I mean, it took, I guess, I mean, I'm sure it took a lot of guts for you to leave the situation that you were in Texas or Los Angeles, wherever. I'm confused now. Out of your situation and leave and start fresh.
I wish I could tell you it was difficult, but it wasn't. I think it depends what you're attached to.
Yeah.
I think it depends what you're connected to. It wasn't difficult for me to leave. It's harder now for me to be gone now that I've made peace.
Mhm.
Whereas before it was a matter of survival.
Right.
And so at that point, it's a fuck it. There has to be something better than this.
Yeah.
And I think that's it. It's that fuck it moment.
Well, you get to a point where you've had enough. You're like, this is it. That's the final straw.
Mm-hmm.
And that you need to break free from whatever situation that I'm in, it has to be better than this situation.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, part of our main discussion for today, right, is the beauty in suffering. Like when, I just got shingles 3 weeks ago, and I'm actually in a lot of pain as we speak. Like, I'm in pain, and it really puts perspective on life. We don't appreciate our health until we suffer with pain, right?
Yeah.
And why does it have to be that way? Why do we have to suffer to appreciate the beauty in not suffering? So can you kind of spin it and say there is a beauty to suffering? Like, we must suffer in order to appreciate
Oh yeah.
the good that we have?
Oh yeah. I mean, it creates such a contrast. It really provides like perspective and gratitude of right what we do have, like you were just saying.
Yeah.
But and maybe not speaking to the shingles thing, of course, and that's difficult. And also I have a very cool trick for that if you want, on the nursing side.
All right.
We'll talk about that later for my or maybe I'll put it on here for the podcast if you're okay with it for people.
Whatever you
But
want.
a cool trick I learned is like CBD cream
Okay.
will just knock that pain. We'll just calm it down. Like, so I'm out here nursing in Colorado. I'm like, y'all are onto something here. But yeah, I've watched my family suffer. It started with them. It always starts with them. And the pain that I felt as a kid was watching my mother just be drained of her vitality, of her ability to shine and connect. I've watched her live life dying all the time.
Mm.
Just in all the ways, internally giving up of herself, her children, all these things. She had beautiful qualities, but they were never in places that could really be seen or really appreciated. And even all that suffering that I witnessed as a kid, I mean, my parents are immigrant parents. My father escaped a war in El Salvador, the Civil War in El Salvador, and they have gone through so much and taught me a lot of lessons as a young child. Kids are so aware and they're so smart. And all the people that think, oh, they're just a child, they don't know. Oh, they know. They know so much. And being in that and seeing that and saying, I love all of you, but I can't do this with you. I have to make something else of myself. I have to make something else of this life. There's no way that, whatever you believe in, God, spirit, universe, that we get a chance to exist and not make something great out of it. It's so beautiful. And so my family, my parents suffering gave me this, like, the scientist of me, if you will, this like this desire to prove the universe wrong, right? Of my existence, that there has to be something else. Like, I'm going to die trying to find it. And I had to go through a lot of pain, and I found it. And just the gratitude of living, of existing. Not just, barely making it, but like being connected to myself, and like realizing if I can get through that suffering, whatever it is, everyone can pick their big point, their defining moment, if you will, and say, I got through it in this way, this way, this way. I had people who loved me. I was given shelter. I was given just these small things, and realizing there's always light at the end of the tunnel. And so it really provided me with this ability to appreciate all the small things, like the dirt in the ground. Like, when was the last time you went in the dirt in the ground? You're like, fuck, this thing is amazing. And like, put it in mud and like, put it on your face. You're like, this is so good. When was the last time?
Can't say I've ever done that. Maybe at the Dead Sea in Israel, I've done that, but not anywhere else.
Oh, that's incredible.
That was pretty amazing.
That sounds amazing. Yeah. Well, that sounds like an amazing experience. Just, is like the texture harder? Like, is it gonna like?
It's like, well, the Dead Sea is like salt water, so yeah, it's supposed to be like really good for your skin. You can like buy the mud and take it home in packets. So yeah.
Oh, well, if you don't have any left, we're gonna have to make a Dead Sea in your backyard or something.
There we go.
But like just it feeling good, and it's just really that feeling of like letting loose completely and just not giving a shit.
Yeah, but a lot of people don't do that. We don't do that, especially the older we get. The more we are like, for whatever reason, we have to keep it together.
I don't know who made up that rule, but I'm not.
How do we change it?
How do we change it? It starts with you.
Yeah.
Pick one rule that you've made for today, whether it's, I'm going to get in my bed on the left side, change it to, I'm going to jump straight in the middle, Superman it, and laugh at myself.
Right.
Right. Just that one little, like, fuck it. Like, I'm going to be defiant with yourself.
Yeah. We don't do it enough.
No.
Everybody kind of follows the rules of protocol of what you should do in life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they lose sight of who they actually are. They lose themselves. We lose ourselves. I'm a victim.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you happy now? Do you classify yourself as a happy person?
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah. So you've been through so much in life. You've suffered so much, and you've gotten to a point where now you're like, everything is out and you're just happy. And there are a lot of people listening here that maybe have not dealt with their suffering and enter anxiety and depression and are dealing with so many mental health issues. What advice do you have for those people to kind of break those barriers and just kind of let it all come out?
Well, there's one that comes to mind. Right, there's balance to everything. So if it's possible for things to get this bad, it's possible for it to get that good. And it's really a matter of just like believing to the core.
Yeah.
Or not even just believing, like, not, almost to a fault, not permitting the belief that it is going to stay this way. Become afraid of complacency, become afraid of familiarity. And if you're not changing, something is wrong. Develop an amazing relationship with change. Just like, who the heck am I going to be? I'm like, what am I going to be in 10 years? What am I going to be in 5 years? Like, I cannot wait to discover who that person is. Just this like kid, like just curiosity in little moments. Like, I wonder what happens if I just, have the rest of the conversation like that. For all I know,
Can you
this
do
would upset a lot of people.
it?
It would be really hard.
Little hard to talk like that.
Yeah, I've never done this, but every time you do something like that or like witness that within yourself, you're breaking a rule.
Right.
And
I can't even do it.
Yeah. But find the thing that you're passionate about, whether it's your children, because we as people live for other people. If we're not living in community, it's really hard to want to do anything.
Yeah.
I got out of my situation because I needed to do it for my sisters, for them to see how I needed to be the first to traverse that rocky road. So I can say, this is how you do it. Let me roadmap it for you. It may not be exactly the same, but fucking hell, let me tell you, you can get through it.
Yeah. Are your sisters in a good place?
They're working on it.
Working on it.
They're working on it. Or not them, my previous partner. I mean, I love him. We're not together. We're married. He's working on leaving the military right now for deployments. And I will go back and answer your question. He told me as he's trying to leave, his duties and kind of recover while he's still in, he's like, if I hadn't witnessed you do what you've done, I would have never thought it was possible. It would have been easier to just pull the trigger. It would have been easier to, just
give up.
Say, fuck it, that's it. Let's go on another deployment.
Yeah.
You have to witness somebody you really connect with. So for the people who want to get out, find the people who have lived your story and gotten out, or are living the story you want to tell later.
Yeah.
And so there's, books and things like that, podcasts, and just start like, where do these people live? That wasn't necessarily how I went about it, as far as like, where do these people live? Kind of found me.
Yeah.
But just like, who do I want to be? Start there. Who do I want to be? Who do I want to do it for?
Yeah. So have a vision.
Yeah.
For what you want to get to. But one thing I think it's important for everybody to understand is it's a process. Like, this didn't happen for you overnight. It took a lot of work. You put work into it. And it takes progress on a daily basis to get to that point. And sometimes it feels like slow progress, but eventually, if you have enough inches, you'll get to a mile. It takes time, but you'll get there.
Yeah. It took 6 years of active work for me to not have a flashback.
Yeah.
And then I had to find the ways that being in pain was nice.
Yeah.
For example, as a very independent woman, I got to a place where I was sad and lonely. And once I got past kind of this fear of intimacy, I was like, now I got to be a baby. Now people get to bring me things, right? Yeah. now people get to share their gifts with me when I'm suffering.
Yeah.
And I mean, you're right. It's a hard process.
And you said it many times. It's change. It comes with change. Like, you have to change your friend. You might have to change your friendships. You might have to change your surroundings. You might have to even change your relationship with your relatives, as you did. Moved away from your family, moved away from the negativity, and surrounded yourself with positivity, and really looked at the light and appreciated small things, even if it's the mud on the ground, like just appreciate everything that we have and focus on the future and focus on the now, right?
Yeah. Or as one of my friends say, like even the air, you can lick the air.
Yeah.
And it'd be amazing.
Right. It's all about perspective. I think we take a lot for granted.
Yeah. And also one thing that was always I needed to hear too, for the people who are listening is allow yourself to be the victim. You have to be there.
Yeah.
You have to say, I was hurt.
Right.
Because if you don't acknowledge, get angry about what's happening, anger turns into passion once it is just, directed in a way of change. Anger turns into passion. So if you never get to that place of I'm angry about what's happening,
right,
I'm over it, it's never going to turn into something else. So be a victim because you were, whatever that is, like allow yourself to be there reasonably. And
yeah,
I'm going to do this change thing, make these next steps with freaking tears in my eyes. I don't care how ugly I look. I'm doing it.
Well, people tend to suppress things or kind of shove things under the carpet, or like you might have flashbacks about your youth and things that happened in your youth, but people tend to not think about it, kind of put it in a different part of their brain. Well, do you have any suggestions for people on how maybe kind of bring everything out? Like,
that's a good question. Change your environment.
Yeah.
Because if you're that suppressed, which I've been, I hadn't talked to just a little bit of a background. I was incapable of feeling like human connection till November 2022. Like when someone touches you and you feel human connection, or they look at you, you can feel love from their eyes or like an emotion. I was incapable of feeling that.
That was last year.
That was, wait, 2021. I'm so
There
sorry.
you go. 2 years.
November 2021. And it's because the reason that happened was because I started creating space. It started with my environment.
Right.
I moved. That's what unlocked the trauma. There was space.
Yeah.
Starts with physical space before you can create environmental, physical, emotional space.
Yep.
Next. And then the ability to heal and deal with it and learn what every emotion is. And you'll have this like shutdown moment as you're figuring it out. But I would say look at the people around you. Like, do I want to be like you? If the answer is no, is get out of there. That would just be like the first step. Yeah. Get the fuck out of there.
Yeah. Andrea, well, you've taught me a lot today, and you're very fascinating and you have so much dimension to you, and I appreciate everything you've taught us today. So the concept of my podcast is the LifePro podcast is a manual to life, because everything in life comes with a manual except for life itself. And one thing that I ask everybody that comes on the show is what is one thing you want to teach the world?
I want to teach the world, one, this psychic abilities, this ability to connect on this next level is something everybody has. And because as a society, we don't nurture it, we don't cultivate it, is why we're so dysregulated.
Yeah.
Because I'll tell you right now, the psychic space is powerful. It's so the fact that we have this ability to connect on this huge scale, and we don't nurture it because we're afraid of power, because we don't know what to do with it respectfully. Human connection. I mean, let me just say this. Psychic has to do with the mind, the power of the mind. This isn't a crazy thing. That's why you can feel something's wrong with the loved one across the world. We're so deeply connected. And I want to create safety around this connection, because when you do, you become more connected to your purpose. You become more connected to your voice. You become more connected to the air, the wind, the wind, the bees outside. And but you just get more clarity on where you're supposed to be moment for moment. And there's this flow to your life, almost as if your life was made specifically for you.
Yeah.
And I want everyone to experience life from that place and teach them how to create whatever world they want. You can literally make anything you want out of this experience. And there's some magic in that. There's some magic. It's just, how do you connect to it?
So what do you say to people? I'm sure there's a lot of people skeptical of when you tell them what you do, right?
Yeah.
I would say 9 out of 10, maybe more, people are skeptical. Is that fair?
Not when they talk to me.
No, I know, I get that. I
Yeah.
understand that when they talk to you, they understand, okay, this is for real, right?
Yeah.
But what does it take for people? Like how do you convey this? How do you teach people?
I'll sit them in a session with me, and one exercise. It really just takes one exercise.
And everybody's a believer.
And they blindly do a reading, and it's accurate. The details are accurate.
Yeah.
And they'll come back, or they're like, oh shoot, I use this in my day-to-day life. I had this one guy, actually, very logic based. I think that's key too, is I am fortunate enough to be able to explain it in a way that's digestible, and thank you, science background. I mean, it's really quantum physics. It's very big stuff. Well,
Basic.
Anyway, my father's an engineer, okay. So he had a reading, and he's like, I want to see what this is like. And I'm like, it's really the experience. You're putting different words on it. You're mistaking it for your imagination or creativity, and don't understand it's actually interactive. And so let me show you how you can use this for refinement. And so after he sat down with this one experience with me, he had gone out to a restaurant, and he was trying to do some networking. And there was this lady he was talking to. Actually, it was his waitress, I believe. She came over to do something, and he had reported back to me that he heard she's going to Mexico City. And so he, oh so gently, without putting himself out there too hard, was like, ma'am, do you travel a lot? I feel like I was like, you seem like someone who travels. And she was like, yeah, I'm going to Mexico City next week. He was like, no shit. So just like reports back to me and was like, guess what? This is what happened, and blah, blah, blah. I was like, see what happens when you just start to acknowledge there is volition to these whispers that say, go left, and then all of a sudden you avoid this tragic accident. But like these small whispers that not just save your life, you can be intentional and connecting with it to find your dharma, your call to life. It's like, you're going to collaborate with that person. It's like, oh Jesus, but there's rules. It's like, okay, let's see what happens. I used to make bets with my last partner. I'm like, watch, this is what's going to happen. It's not fair to him, but whatever. And then it would unfold.
Right.
And so just continuing to nurture that part of yourself that always knew better. Whether it was, I should have broke up with that guy, I should take that job, and then you prove yourself right. At the end of the day, you know what you're supposed to do.
Right.
Just
interesting. And my next question to you is there a book that potentially changed your life, or the trajectory of your life, that you like to talk about?
because of the topic of suffering specifically, so this partnership I keep talking about, this partnership changed my life. He changed my life. And he was fortunate enough to have met this author and told me about this book. It's called Tribe by Sebastian Junger. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And I felt so connected to why life being so difficult was a beautiful thing and necessary, but it also provided different perspectives of it. The military, somebody who's traveling, family members when they've lost somebody they love, and the beauty in how that brings community, because we want to help.
Yeah.
We want to help. Our gifts only matter when somebody can receive it. And unfortunately, that's usually when someone's in pain or suffering or just inconvenienced by a flat tire.
Right.
It's like there's gotta be somebody here who, I'm like, guys, anyone help me.
Yeah.
And it's such a great invitation. And so that book, Tribe, describes Sebastian Junger's journalism days and how he just paints suffering in so many beautiful lights, and how it's so necessary for society to keep flourishing. Like, suffering is, we suffer, things become good, and we have good times, then it's easy times, and then easy times causes suffering, because if it's too easy, we're like, well, we're not being challenged.
Right.
And I believe it's Jordan Peterson that made that example. So and it stands true. You're like, oh, suffering, I'm like, I'm gonna learn something new.
Yeah.
I'm gonna learn something new. I'm gonna either learn how to get myself out, how to receive, build a better community, whatever it is. There's always something in there.
Right.
So that book is an amazing book.
And I love it. And I think the title is very appropriate. And that's one thing that maybe we didn't touch on is, no matter how much you've suffered, like, you're not alone. Like, other people have gone through the same thing. And not only that is, we need other people. We need to be part of a community. We need support. And we need, you talked about having your team, right? We all need our family, our friends, our professionals, our therapists. Like, we're stronger together, and surrounding ourselves with positivity and the right people, changing the right aspects of our lives that we need to change in order to create a better life is all part of, whether you've suffered in life or not, you could always improve your life and create a better quality of life. And if you haven't suffered, helping somebody else that's suffering can also help improve life for yourself and for others, and doing good in the world, I think is part of what I'm trying to do here, right? Is just do better, do something, make a difference. And if we can make a difference, if I can make a difference in myself and also help other people, then I feel like I've achieved my purpose in life.
Yeah, I mean, you're doing an incredible thing by doing this. This is not my gift. This is not my talent. If I tried to do your thing, I would be suffering.
No, I'm sure you could do whatever you set your mind to it. I believe it.
I don't choose this, but
if you did, you'd be fine. You'd be great. And I think your positivity, like the first time we spoke, like your positivity like radiates, and it's infectious. And I think that that's pretty evident through this podcast and through your experience and everything that you've shared with us. And I thank you for everything that you've shared. And I know these are kind of like, it's maybe not the easiest thing to talk about, but I'm sure it helps you to talk about. It helps other people to hear these things. So you do a lot of psychic development coaching, and you connect with other people. How can people get in touch with you or follow you?
May I answer one thing before I go to that one?
Please.
Okay. real quick, because you were talking about suffering, another thing I kind of wanted to share with people is, there's also the limiting beliefs of I don't have enough money or whatever it is. I was broke as hell.
Yeah.
Paying for my therapist, going to nursing school, went into debt because I was like, I have to give it all I got. I work part-time. I did the minimal of everything possible just to like, I need to go all in on financially on my mental health and go freaking hard because there's nothing else. So yeah, for the people out there who think like I can't do it, whatever it is, there's free help. There's free women's group. I know a bunch of coaches out there who are free. Just like start putting yourself in those areas. There is a lot of free help out there, even if they're not
Yeah.
therapists.
Make a decision first and then find a way. There's always a way.
Yes, yes. And broke life is not my life no more.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, how people can find me, was that it?
Follow you, find you, people want to get in touch with you.
Yeah, Instagram would be the best. Yet to have a website. It's Reya underscore, so REA underscore LYNN underscore, and that's the best thing. That doesn't work for you because you don't like Instagram, or you are better than me and have decided Instagram is a bottomless pit. You can email me as well. Do you have a place where you can
Yeah,
find
well,
that?
we'll put your information in the comments so everybody can
Okay, so
find it that way.
that will
Yeah.
be in the comments.
All right. Andrea, I had so much fun today. I hope you did. I hope you enjoyed as much as I did. I know that a lot of people listening will take away a lot of golden nuggets here. Remind everybody like, follow, and share and help us spread the word. Andrea, take care.
You too.